Aloha and welcome back to the Hana Packers Edition podcast, the podcast where two dudes from halfway across the world chat everything green and gold. I'm Mike, and that's Iowa Joe. I'm gonna get that right on the first try at some point. But yep, we're back. Packers are on the middle of their bye week right now. Just reviewing how we've gotten to this point on the season. The Packers are 2-3, looking for a bounce back coming out against a lowly Broncos team. But who are we to talk about a team being lowly when the Packers have done what they've done the last 2 weeks? But Joe, where do you sit with this team right now?
I think most of the rational fans have figured that this was what we were going to go through. It's a first time starting quarterback. It's a young team. There's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be injuries. We're all frustrated with it, but I think if we can sit back and rationalize it, we can understand why they're not where they're at. Like we've said many times, it's how they go through these slumps and finish out the season. If they're still slumping all the way through the season, then yeah, maybe we need to take a look at some things and work it out. So it's not where we would want to be, but it's where we all figured it was probably going to end up being at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's, like you said, that's the honest and realistic expectation of what this team is. Just from personal point of view, especially after the last few seasons where this team had much higher expectations. Especially the years where Rodgers was either winning or coming off of winning, back-to-back MVPs. The expectation is Super Bowl or bust, and this year, even when they've played as bad as they have the last 2 weeks, throwing up the dud at home against the Lions and just looking like they couldn't stop throwing up on themselves in Vegas. The level of upsetness at the team has, for me at least, not lingered past maybe an hour after the end of the game. Because like you said, Joe, it's just, in the moment, you're like, damn it, they had so many chances. And afterward, you're like, okay, it's a young team. They're making young team mistakes. And most importantly, it's how they're going to bounce back. And yeah, like you said, they have a big opportunity coming out of the break to right the ship and empty out some of the water they've taken on the last couple of weeks, because not big tests right away, but getting to face a Broncos team that is both cooked and trying to let Russ cook that's what we said about the Raiders the last week, but hopefully this is the breath of fresh air that this team needs to see a team that's, again, kind of on their level and see if they can get back in the win column to get
you got to kind of
back.
watch the Broncos defense in a way. I mean, yeah, they gave up 70 against Miami, but just Thursday night, they only gave up 19 to the Chiefs. So I know the Chiefs aren't really where they should be either, but they're still the reigning Super Bowl champions, and they're still not really a horrible team. I mean, they're 5-1, and their only loss was against the Lions by a point. So, yeah, but there's so much. What do you want to call it? So much. It's an every given Sunday type deal, because I know people who hate betting on the NFL because it's so hard to gauge anything on it, because anything can happen any Sunday. Just like today, the Browns beat the 49ers. So the 49ers and the Eagles were the only two undefeated teams left, and they both lost today. So it can happen. So it's not something you can look past. I think it's what the Vikings after the Broncos. So you can't look past the Broncos towards the Vikings, even though they're not really much of anything. They squeaked out a win against the Bears today, but it seems like everybody and their brother are beating the Bears for what it's worth. So, well, except for, I guess, the Commanders or whatever. But so you can't really look past any teams. You got to take it one step at a time. We all know how LaFleur's team, well, not just LaFleur's, because we seem to struggle with it under McCarthy too. So any team in Green Bay struggles coming off of a bye week. So hopefully they've been working, maybe not at organized activities, but doing something to get themselves built up and haven't been slacking to face the Broncos.
Yeah, that would be extremely disappointing. But like we said, opportunity for a bounce back. Yeah, you have Brown coming out of the bye. You have Broncos, Vikings, Rams, and this Packers team. I mean, no team should be looking ahead too many weeks. I know it's human nature, but especially with the caliber of this Packers team, they definitely should not be looking past any opponent that's on the schedule. They just do not have the. I don't want to say they don't have the talent, but they don't have the know-how or the just the veteran know-how or requisite resume to look past any opponent at this point in their development. But it's gonna be a prime time game, which kind of just you shake your head out a little bit in terms of where the team stand. I don't, prime time as in it's gonna be in the later afternoon slot, so there's a chance it's one of the like featured games, because even though the teams aren't great, it's two franchises that have relatively, Green Bay has the biggest history, the Broncos have relatively more history, not more history than Green Bay, but they have a rich history within the last 30 years. But um setting it all up, we've talked about how we've gotten to this point in the season, and anytime we review where the Packers are, the spotlight is always going to go to Jordan Love. And Joe, we've seen ups, we've seen downs. Unfortunately, we're in a little bit of a downswing right now, but overall, just we kind of recapped it in our previous pod when we recapped the Raiders game. But what's the temperature check with Love right now for you?
I think he's at where I figured he was going to be at. If you remember back a couple episodes, I said he was going to come back more down to earth because, you know, just because of his past numbers and everything, he was looking way uh, above average or above his average. And so he was going to come back to down to earth a little bit, but now it's going to be how he rebounds off of that. So is he going to be able to come back and say, all right, I got to settle down. I've got to make my reads, because like I quoted Don Mikowski the last episode, he looks too tense out there. He's making he's predetermining his throws. He just needs to go out, relax, make his reads, and just fling the ball. Don't stare down your receivers. We know that's been a problem with not necessarily Rodgers, but a guy like Favre and that, where they stare down their receivers, so that's when the picks come. And we see that with other teams where their quarterback just likes to stare down the the guy they want to throw to, and that's when they get deflected or picked or whatever. So, but the big thing is get the OL meshing together, get the offensive line to start meshing together, give him some protection. I don't care what they say. Maybe they need to start changing up. I know they view Zach Tom as their starting right tackle for the near future, but maybe you got to move him inside. Maybe you got to put him at left tackle. Maybe you got to make that switch and make it now and do it before your next game, not like in the middle of your next game, because that's when things start getting rough. I'm still kind of curious of why they're not thinking Yash isn't part of the plan for now, given that they tagged him for like $2.5 million, and he's just kind of riding the bench. And I guess he tipped the one kick against the Raiders, but you're paying this guy 2.5 million to ride your bench and make occasional special teams plays. So, especially considering you've had him on the roster for what is this? This is year 5, year 4, something like that. So you had an idea of what you wanted in him. Get him out there. If you're not thinking he's going to be a part of your rotation anymore, then maybe you should trade him for what you can get out of him. there's teams out there like the Jets and that would be willing to give up a pick or two. Well, maybe not two, but like a mid-round pick or something, or a pick swap or a player swap or something to get a solid tackle. I mean, that's the big reason why Aaron Rodgers is hurt right now, is because his O-line gave out on him and he got hit too many times. So that's the big thing. Get your offensive line together. Switch them up if you have to. I like Rasheed Walker, but it's obvious that he's going through his struggles. Now, whether or not they want to keep running him through there, maybe throw him at right tackle because he is somebody you want playing. I mean, he's had a lot of good plays, but he's also had some of his struggles, which that's going to come with a young kid who was drafted in the 7th round. There are going to be the issues with him, but he has shown that he has the capability to do it. He's just missing some calls or whatever, not making the adjustment that he needs to make. Now, who knows if that was because of, he was playing against revolving door Newman for the longest time, or, what, because it looked like he was doing a little bit better when Elton was back beside him. So, and that's just me. I mean, Mike, you're a little bit more in depth on things, so you might see things a little bit different with him. But in just my eyes, it looked like he was doing better with Elton beside him than he was with Newman beside him. So, that's something's got to be. Josh Myers is another one that's really struggling. I would, if it were me, he'd be packing his bags and we'd take whatever we can get for him right now. You got Michael Jordan on the practice squad that probably can step in. You've been saying all along Zach Tom's best position is probably center, so throw him at center, put Nyman or Walker at right tackle and the other one on the left side, and just roll with that. I know John Runyon's getting a lot of blame on things, but I can't put it all on him. Not when he's got a bum leg Tom on one side that's kind of struggling, and a Josh Myers who is blocking his own people better than he is, putting blocks on his own people better than he is against opposing defenses. So something's got to change with it. We all know it has to. I believe LaFleur even knows it. Stinovich even knows it. Maybe you say, hey, Stino, stop worrying about the offense and just go handle the offensive line or something and go from there. But that's the big issue, is let Jordan Love relax and rebuild the offensive line to give him more time to do things.
Yeah, honestly, that's all, fair points. And this, like you said, this is the time to do it because this is the bye week. This is their way station for the season. If you're gonna make any kind of wholesale change, you got to do it when you have time to make, both the mental and physical adjustments. I don't know how far they would go. The one you brought up that they might do is potentially switching the tackles around, just because we know that Bakhtiari is done for the season at this point. So do you swap around, put Tom on the left side, get Walker on the right side? Or like you said, do they just completely reshuffle the deck and put Tom at center, leave Walker, just wherever they want Walker to get more reps at, and then have Yosh play the other tackle? We'll find out come practice. I'm not sure exactly what the team's practice schedule is going to be this week, but I'm going to assume it's going to be they're going to start on Tuesday. They might practice tomorrow on Monday, but I haven't seen the practice schedule for the week. But if they're going to make a change without, obviously the Bakhtiari injury is a big one, but without other injuries, forcing their hand, this is the time that you got to do it because like you said, Joe, they have the extra time. They have the practice reps to go around and shuffle guys around. The only other time they're going to have some extra downtime is after Thanksgiving because they're going to play the Lions on Thanksgiving. And then, but then, that one's a little rough because they go and they play the Chiefs on Sunday night the following week. So while they'll have 10 days between the games, that's still, it's not having the entire bye where you can go through, the full battery of team meetings and things like that. So, and then shifting it back to Love, like you said, the Makowski interview, I thought he said a lot of really good points on that. Yeah, the first few weeks, Jordan, he wasn't perfect, or even, and Packer fans were kind of losing their minds when some people were saying that Love wasn't great the first few weeks, but he wasn't. He was making good plays every now and again, but in between he was missing some gimmies and stuff. So, but the difference that happened between the first 3 weeks of the season and the last 2 weeks is that I don't have the numbers, great radio, but just by the eye test, you can tell that he felt a lot more pressure the past 2 weeks than he did the first 3 weeks of the season. Um, First 3 weeks, yeah, I know that some people kind of pointed out maybe he predetermined some reads, but I felt like he looked a lot more poised, a lot more decisive going through his reads because he had trust that the O line was going to keep him upright. Past 2 weeks, you don't want to see it, and it's not an excuse, but when you start to get hit around every other play, you're gonna start to make concessions in terms of hey, I might just hot route this one, and it's led to some issues for Love the past couple weeks. He's missed some throws, he's thrown 5 interceptions the past 2 weeks. All 6 of his interceptions are in the last 3 games. So, yeah, that's the big thing that I want to see out of him coming out of the bye is play a clean game, get his completion percentage up again. I made the half-hearted joke after the Lions game of, well, at least he hit 64% of his passes against the Lions, but like you said, Joe, I think the first 3 weeks they kind of slightly reset everyone's expectations because there was a little bit of, well, yeah, he's missing some throws, but the good is pretty damn good. So if he's looking that good, maybe we are potentially ahead of schedule. And the reality is, yes, part of it is growth for Love. He hasn't, as much as, yes, he's a 4th-year player. If you're not playing, there's only certain things you can learn from being, even having all the practice reps because Rodgers was hurt most of the last year. There's certain things he can only learn from being in live fire, and he hasn't been that guy since he was in college. He's had a start in 2021. He's had played a half here and there, every kind of thing. So and it's kind of the point you made when you started off, Joe, where it's, okay, Love's gonna, and it's happened a little faster than I thought it would, but Love made plays early in the season, and then the league started to adjust back to him. And now it's up to him and LaFleur. They've got to get back to what was working the first few weeks of the season and adjust back to what the league adjusted to Love. And that's the part that, like, a nerd like me is really interested to see, because how Love is able to adjust and adapt. That's the thing everyone says is, if you don't evolve and adapt in this league, you'll go extinct. And fair or not, Love's timeline is this season, and they've got to know, hopefully with time to spare. You don't want it to go to the end of, you don't want it to go to the end of week 18 if they don't make the playoffs, where you're still going, oh, are they going to sign this guy to an extension or are they not? You want it to be around really that Thanksgiving game where you're kind of thinking, yeah, this is the guy, or this has blown up in our faces. What moves do we need to make? Do we need? Are we bad enough that we can get a top quarterback, or what's the move after that? So
now I have to think on this because I'm not great with contracts or anything, but he's got this year and next year under contract, right?
yes,
So my feeling is if there's going to be an extension, unless he completely blows up and just goes Rodgers MVP nuts throughout the rest of the season, that they're not even going to consider an extension until next year. Because I think
there's the chance they do that, but I think the ideal is that he just plays well enough that you're thinking, I'm going to do the extension this year kind of thing. Because the position they don't want to be in is the Daniel Jones situation, where it's like you wait till the end of his contract and then it's like, oh, he played well, but is that indicative of what's going to come, or he played well because it's a contract year kind of thing? And I don't I don't think it's as hard to make that decision as some do. Like, everyone who kind of says like, well, what were the Giants supposed to do? And I was like, well, like, yeah, it might suck that you don't have a quarterback the next year, but does that $40 million you're paying Daniel Jones look good right now? So the way I look at it is that they'd rather have the ability to make the decision that, yeah, Love is the guy and we're extending him this year. The the thing is like, where, in terms of if he gets another year, is where is the team sitting in terms of potentially getting another quarterback in this draft? Are they so bad that they're in the running for one of the top picks? I don't think they will be, but like I said, Green Bay has only played 5 games. They've got 12 more to go, so we don't know where they're going to stand at the end of the season. So, it, like I said, nothing is off the table at this point. The ideal is that, from a fan wanting to see the team do well and wanting to see the players on the team do well, is that Love gets back on that upward trajectory and is just playing better and better each week. You know, Obviously you'd like team success to go along with it, but if it's just him and, yeah, you see some of the young players start to play better around him too. I can live with that, and I think the team will look at it in the right, frame it in the right reference point to say like, yeah, whether and that's the thing too, is like, they could say, okay, yeah, we like where it's going, and maybe they don't go with the full on like 5-year extension kind of thing. Maybe they go with a shorter one, but they want, I don't want to say they want to have everything. I mean, obviously, like I said, the ideal is you have everything with a bow on it at the end of this season, preferably with Love being the guy. But I think they want as many questions answered, good or, for better or worse, by the end. By the end of the season, preferably with about a month to go, so that they have runway to start formulating a plan for next year and stuff like that. So
Well, this is how I look at it, though. I completely understand, and I agree for the most part with what you're saying. So, that's not it. But I don't think there's enough stuff for us for this coming draft year. If, let's say, they decide Love isn't the guy, I don't think there's enough for them to go out and draft a guy to be the replacement. Because if Love isn't the guy, then theoretically you're either A, going to keep him for the 1 year as a backup and just let the guy, throw him out there, see what he can do, whoever they would draft, or B, you're going to go out and throw Jordan Love out there to play for the 2nd year. And if he's not the guy and he's still playing like crap, you're still going to end up with another top draft pick. So I don't know if there's enough stuff for them to say, all right, well, Jordan Love's not the guy, we need to go ahead and draft somebody. Because then what happens the next year if Jordan goes out and just completely runs, rampant across the league? Do you just, because now you just drafted a guy, you've got another guy who is looking hot. You're not going to waste all that draft capital and all that space on 2 guys who could potentially be your starter going forward. So that's why I'm thinking maybe next year is the time. This is the trial year. If he starts getting it together, he starts working it out, then the offseason they can work on a extension. If he doesn't, we give him the first couple of weeks next year. If he's still not getting it together, then we just punt, count our losses and go into that draft class, because you're going to have a top pick going through that draft class. Then you just say, all right, who's our best guy going forward with that?
I think it's definitely a possibility. And the way that scenario plays out is like, Love it just ends up average. Because yeah, where I'm talking about where they would definitely pick his replacement is if they somehow end up with one of the top like 2 picks, and you're able to pick a Caleb Williams, because at that point, to be that bad, that means he sucks,
Right.
Yeah. And so,
but what I'm thinking is,
but you're right too. But you're right, where if it's just down the middle average, because you're not in range to get one of those guys anyway. And I don't know if Green Bay would be able to trade up to get one of them anyway.
I,
Then you do kind of run it back and see what happens. I think it's that's where, and like I said, that's definitely a possibility. The preferable is that it's either, I don't want to even say it necessarily has to be way good, but it has to be trending good or just so bad that you know that it's either, yep, we're probably going with him, moving forward, or we're pulling the plug and that's it kind of thing and stuff. So
and
that's
see,
just where I kind of think it's going.
you brought up the Daniel Jones reference. Well, if we work on an extension now, we're putting ourselves in that Daniel Jones situation. Because, yeah, unless he goes, like I said, lights out, Aaron Rodgers MVP, or, the RELAX thing, and just goes nuts and puts it all together by the end of the season, and we have just like a slim chance to make the playoffs or whatever, then you give him that big money. Then you got to worry next year. Well, was it just him actually putting it together, or were we just had a moment, a flash? Whereas if you go through the season, then you go into next year and you say, all right, we're going to say, uh, let's say the bye week is week 10. All right, we're going to go into week 7 or week. When's the trade deadline usually? That's week 8, right?
Something around there.
Okay, we're going to go into week 5. If Jordan Love is still running hot by week 5, do it. We're going to work on a contract. We're going to give him his money. We're going to make him the next franchise quarterback. But on the flip side, then you start looking, all right, he's not doing anything. We'll punt, maybe consider trading him, because obviously you got Sean Clifford there. And let me preference this. I'm not saying Sean Clifford is a better quarterback than Jordan Love. I'm not saying we need to bench Jordan Love. I'm looking a year ahead. All right, you still got Sean Clifford. You're still probably going to draft another guy mid rounds, late rounds in the next draft. You're still going to do that. All right, we'll just, we'll see what we got from there. Obviously, Jordan's not it. Because I have a bad taste in my mouth. Everybody knows I'm this big Hawkeye fan and everything. Well, they keep sticking with these fucking quarterbacks, and no matter what the issue is, they won't try anybody else. I don't want to see that with the Packers. If he's not it, cut him out, throw somebody else in there. I don't care if it's XFL MVP Alex Magoo. You throw somebody friggin' else in there and try it. Dig up the corpse of Matt Ryan and put his ass out there if you have to. But whatever it is, if Jordan Love isn't it, then don't waste it. So that's what I mean. This year, let him ride. Next year, go a couple weeks. If he's still showing good, if he's still trending the right way, all right, let's throw some money at him. But if he's not, cut your ties, put something else in there.
Yeah. I think and that's totally fair and honestly would be a very understandable way of doing it. I think like I said, I just think their preference and how they've handled it in the past is Andrew Brandt kind of said it, where they always preferred to be in position to extend a quarterback with a year or two left on their deal.
Well, that's always the hope.
That's the hope. And like I said, that's the hope. And I'm not saying that's definitely what's going to happen, but that's the hope. But like you said, it's on a range of from that outcome happening to your scenario to he stinks, and whether he's just bad enough this year that you can get a Caleb Williams or a Drake May, or like you said, he's middling and then next year by the early part. And that's the thing is, like, if they're running with him next year and he just sucks, like, oh well, like you're gonna keep losing games whether he or Clifford or whoever plays kind of thing. And so I think, like you said, they have options, and that's where it is kind of big that they did come to this agreement this past offseason. So they do have options on the table, but kind of getting back to where the team is right now, it would benefit them if Love is able to get it together, get back to the guy he was the first few weeks. And I don't even want to cap him at that. Like, he was pretty darn good the first few weeks, but there was obvious room for improvement.
That's the
And
floor we want right now. That's not the
exactly.
ceiling. That's the
Yeah.
floor we want.
Yeah. So, and kind of going, and I would say that was one of my big surprise to start the season. The integration of Jaden Reed and Musgrave. Well, Musgrave not so much that it happened because that's all we heard coming out of training camp, but the fact that we saw it early on, and then that kind of leads into my biggest disappointment to start the season is that okay, and then it's like, oh, Christian Watson came back against the Lions, and then they were like, we're just going to put all our eggs in the basket of a receiver who, yes, he's extremely talented, but it's pretty clear he's not 100% healthy. And I'm like, yes, you should be trying to get your best players the ball and all that kind of stuff, but they were doing a lot of good things the first few weeks of the season with Dobbs, trying to feature Musgrave to draw coverage towards him, getting Jaden Reed open on intermediate routes. And I felt like they've just been Watson hunting the past couple weeks, and that's kind of what's led to some of the issues they've run into the past couple games. But what about you, Joe? What has been your biggest surprise and disappointment on offense so far this season?
Well, I want to touch with something. It looks like Jordan wants to hit that deep pass. He's not been able to really. I mean, he had the one again with Reed. He had the one against the Raiders with Watson, but it looks like he wants to hit that deep pass touchdown. So he's predetermined in his stuff. They're setting up the plays to run that. When, like you said, we have these talented, athletic guys. Scheme them open and let them get yak. We don't need it all in one deep throw. We don't need you to throw 70 yards down the field. We need you to throw this guy open so he can miss a tackle and take it for 70 yards. But it's not happening. These guys aren't wanting to get open right now. So to me, it looks more like a teaching thing than an ability thing because we know Watson can make people miss. We know Dobbs can make people miss. I'm assuming Jaden Reed can make people miss. The surprising thing is when Nick and I were doing our lead up to the draft, I really didn't pay attention to Jaden Reed, not because he wasn't good, but because I didn't even think he fit the Packer parameter. I thought maybe they would just pass on him, but they went and got him in the second round, which I'm not against. I never thought he was a bad player. I just didn't think he fit the parameter. But now that we've seen what he can do, we know he can make moves. We know he can do this stuff. So that's why I say Jordan needs to work a little bit better on getting his reads, making the throws, not predetermining his throw. If Watson is deep, wide open, fuck yeah, throw it. But don't expect that to hit every time. You want to make it so all they have to do is make the one move and they're gone. But anyway, my biggest surprise and disappointment, I guess my biggest disappointment is the offensive line so far because they have been pretty decent over the last few years, but now all of a sudden they've just fallen off. And the thing is we've been without Bakhtiari for the last 3 years, and we've still been able to put up solid offensive lines, and now all of a sudden it's just went away. I know last year was pretty rough, but I also put that back on, injuries, but Josh Myers, I just don't think he's that lead guy you need in the middle of your line. If anything, maybe throw him out at guard, put Tom in the middle, and whatever, because it looks like Josh isn't being able to make the checks at the line that he should make as the pun intended, the middleman of that offensive line. So my biggest disappointment so far is that, and I guess you could put that as the biggest surprise too, that they're not doing as well. But offensive wise, for big surprise, maybe Jaden Reed doing as well as he's doing, because everybody knows that unless he's a sure shot guy, most wide receivers take a little bit to turn into something. We all saw that kind of with Romeo. We all saw that with Christian Watson, where they would have their moments, but it took them a while to get into a routine of doing something. So I'm really surprised with and I hate using this word because they're in the National Football League, but how professional Jaden Reed has been. He's looked like, his routes look pretty good. He's doing his best. He's had his moments where he's not concentrating and focusing the ball into him before trying to get it out there. So he's had a lot of drops, but otherwise he looks like the ultimate pro so far in the stuff he's been able to do.
Yeah. Um, right with you where you and Nick were on the Jaden Reed pick. Um, I remember talking. I've talked to Brand Mafia about it a lot, and both of us we know that he fits their thresholds, and we throw that term out a lot, but um, we know that he's a guy that they would draft, but we didn't think Green Bay would because we didn't think they were looking for a guy who would be a slot primary guy kind of thing. But I mean, that's how you end up with Amari Rogers, and at least the second time looks like it was the charm in terms of going back to that well and getting Jaden Reed this time. But yeah, he's been a breath of fresh air. He's brought a different dynamic to this offense, and they could just get Watson healthy. Those two guys playing off of each other should open up a lot on offense in terms of stretching the field vertically. And that's just the thing to watch going. And that's part of why too, like I said, it's hard to stay upset at this team for too long on offense, I should say, because it's frustrating to see missed opportunities, just lackluster play, mental mistakes. We saw a bunch of it during the Raiders games where, they had those couple of plays where Troy Aikman's going, he's kind of just, making almost basketball jokes because he's like, you do want to attack the middle of the field, but you can't run four receivers within 5 yards of each other and stuff
Right.
like that. So those are the kind of ones where it's irritating, it's frustrating to see, and at the same time, when you look at it after, you're like, yep, that's what happens when you go young. Like, you're gonna have guys who run the wrong routes, who they and I'll get into it when I start writing more articles for the website. Quick plug. But
That
it's
is ohanapackers.org. Check it out.
yeah. So it's the simple things of like, they are still using a bunch of motion on offense, and guys are forgetting, like, okay, I know this route, the number 2 wide receiver runs a certain route, but then when motion happens, they forget, oh, I'm no longer number 2, I'm number 3 now. And you got 2 guys running the same route, and when they turn around, you can tell both of them are like, uh-oh. So
Well, and
those are the
that's
kind of
another
things.
thing. They need to get back to a little bit. And I understand what you're saying about the motion, but they need to get back to maybe some of these trick plays. Get them to feel good about themselves. Do another one of those flea flickers. Just make sure your friggin' footing is set. Do the pass backs. Just get back to having fun.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go. This is a weird one to quote, but going back to the movie Mighty Ducks, that was the big thing, was have fun. Yes, you're playing a game. You're getting paid to play this game. Have fun, more fun. And that's what's going to loosen these guys up. Yeah, you got to be determined, but you know what type of season we're going to have this year. So this is a building year on building stuff. Go out there, run a jet sweep. Go out there, run a flea flicker, run a QB or a running back pass or a wide receiver pass or whatever you got to do. Just be more fun with it. Yeah, it's going to piss off a lot of fans when it doesn't work or whatever. But who are you playing for? Are you playing for the fans, or are you playing to win and to get paid? I know that
No,
sounds bad, but
no,
that's
totally agree. And like, a guy who I think needs that is Tucker Kraft. Everyone's kind of like, what is he doing? He's another cursed third round pick. But it's like, okay, like, this was a guy who was the featured player on his offense at an FCS school. And I say it all the time. Maybe he just sucks, but rookie tight ends tend to suck. And he's not getting any bones thrown his way. Musgrave, they don't care if he screws up a route, screws up a block. Yeah, I know LaFleur chewed him out in the Monday night game and stuff, but he's going to get 5 more targets the rest of the game, kind of thing. Tucker Kraft, he gets called for a hold on a tough play where he's got a wham block from across the formation, and it's like, oh yeah, you're gonna come out for a whole series, but when we put you back in, you got to go and block Max Crosby again, kind of thing, and it's like throw this guy a bone or something. Like I don't know if it's gonna fix everything, but give him something to be like proud about on film, kind of thing, where it's not like everything is everyone saying like, yeah, you screwed that play up, yeah, you messed that up, your technique was bad here, kind of thing, and stuff like that. It kind of goes into what you were saying, Joe, where it's like give guys, and I'm not saying it has to be fair or anything, but put guys in position to succeed. I think that there was a lot of square pegs and round holes just because of, a lot of it you're hoping they'll become round pegs and round holes because you're molding young players into professional athletes. But just kind of give them handouts to help them out, kind of thing. Don't make it where it's all got to be 500 level college course. Give them some 101 class level stuff, kind of thing.
Well, now, if I remember right, Tucker Kraft also wasn't the best blocker coming out of college anyway.
He was an effort blocker. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can't, if you wanted a true blocking tight end, there's one person you needed to keep on the team.
Yep.
And you didn't keep that guy.
Now. Yep.
So you can't go out there and say, all right, well, you're going to be a pure blocking tight end now, because he wasn't a pure blocking tight end in college. He was a playmaker in college.
Yep.
Now it does look, and I could be wrong, you probably know this a little bit more than I do, but that Ben Sims looks like a guy that could be the type that could be a blocker / receiver. He's not going to be, he looks in the mold of a Mercedes Lewis, where he's going to be that blocker, and he's going to be the guy that you're going to throw out there to make a couple of catches, but he's maybe not going to be the stretch or the stretch the field type of guy like a Musgraves is. But I completely agree. Everybody made a big deal about getting Tucker Kraft in there, and now they're just throwing him as a blocker. Get him out there, throw him a couple passes, get him comfortable, then you can work on him. And again, if you wanted a pure blocking tight end, there was a guy that you had on your team for the last half dozen years or whatever it was that you could have had back, and he could be there mentoring your guys right now, and you decided to let him walk because you wanted a completely young team. Well, that's not the player's fault. That's, personnel fault.
Yep. So, like I said, it's so early. Maybe he is no good, but it's too early to tell. And like you said, Joe, he hasn't been put in position to succeed. And I don't think that, oh well, Musgrave is the featured tight end is a good enough excuse. Like, yeah,
no,
Musgrave is the guy.
I'm kind of getting burnt on Musgrave right now because he's a one-touch contact guy, and he needs to learn to be able to throw his shoulder down and take on a couple of guys to go.
Well, and then my thing with that is that's the guy that Kraft is. So like use him for that stuff and just tell Musgrave, just go run a post. Like,
yeah,
we're gonna, like you said, Joe, they need to hit him, but that's his impact. That's his best use on the team, is being that guy that, yeah, he's 6'6" and runs like a deer kind of thing. So send him downfield and let Kraft,
they were calling him like baby Gronk. Well, that was Gronk's thing, was he would catch and he'd run people over.
Yep.
So, yeah, I get you. It's all frustration.
Yeah. So, but talking about frustrations, going towards the frustrating part of this roster, the defense. Like we went over it in our Raiders post game. That Raiders game was like the most Joe Barry game ever, where you want to pull your hair out about a dozen plays in a game, and at the end of the day you're like, they give up 17 points. Yep, you should win more of those than you should lose.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. They did their job, but they couldn't help the offense wasn't doing anything.
Yep.
Because the defense would do their job to get the ball back, and like the Rudy Ford interception. He got the interception, they were in the red zone, and they came away with 3 points. Well, you can't do that. You can't have your defense make the plays and then just come out and get 3 points.
Yep. Or against the Lions, that was true. The Raiders, they did score the touchdown, but yeah, when you get set up on the doorstep, you can't let those kind of opportunities go. And that was an improvement. They did improve what they did from between the Lions game and the Raiders game, but yeah, it's like we went into this season saying this defense, and who knows what it is at this point in terms of why the sum of the individual parts does not add up to what we all think it should be. But that's kind of where I'm still at with this unit. I still have no confidence in them to stuff the run. I know that they played, decently well against the Raiders. But we're gonna find out coming out of the break. The Broncos want to run the ball because Russ is cooked, and the Vikings want to at least try to get something going on the ground. So
To go on that, you got to feel sorry about the Broncos in a way, because they had Nathaniel Hackett. They had tried to get Aaron Rodgers. They couldn't get Aaron Rodgers, so they thought they were going to get the next best thing in Russell Wilson. So they bring in Russ. They don't do anything. Hackett's fired. He goes off into New York. And so they try to bring in McVay, and it's still not doing anything.
Oh yeah, Sean Payton, yeah.
Oh yeah, Peyton, not McVay. They're all
But, yeah,
blended together anymore.
I don't feel too bad for the Broncos. I hate that team.
Well, I'm not a big fan of them either, but you got to feel for the fans in a way, just because of those reasons. You're getting promised Aaron Rodgers, you settle for Russ Wilson, you get promised, such and such, you get Sean Payton, and you still get losing seasons.
Well, just like Red says in the Shawshank Redemption, hope will kill a man. And it's killed Broncos fans the last couple of years.
We're really going to the obscure movies for these friggin'
That's not an obscure movie. That is a piece. That is a masterpiece. But anyway, back to the defense.
We could have.
I would say the things.
That.
I'd say that what I've been most surprised about with this unit is that Rashawn has been as good as he has been, albeit in limited snaps. But he's had a 3-sack game for the first time in his career against the Saints. Against the Raiders, he made what could have been a game-saving play when he sacked Garoppolo on not the Raiders' final drive, but their second to last drive to give the offense a chance with like 3 minutes to go. So Rashawn being back and being pretty explosive like he was pre-ACL has been a nice surprise. What's been your biggest surprise so far on defense?
I'd say Quay. Not that he doesn't have the ability. I just figured it would take him another year to really put things together. He had flashes last year, and he still struggled a bit last year, especially with like temper flaring and stuff like that. But I mean, he's come out and was a completely different player so far this year. He's playing faster. He's making the plays he needs to be. I honestly think, had he not got injured in early on against the Raiders, that I think that game had been completely different, because he was, making the plays to stop the run. And that's what was kind of hurting the Packers in a way, was Jacobs was able to get the yards that he needed to put the offense in their positions. Yeah, there's going to be the talk about, oh, well, Preston's lined up on Devontae, typical Joe Barry defense. Well, like everybody in the world says, who has any ability to look at it. I even laugh because Todd Varney of all people was and I love Todd, no disrespect to Todd, but it was so funny because Todd was even sticking up for Joe Barry and Preston Smith being on Devontae, and it's like they were running a zone scheme. They can't help that that's the position he was put in on that zone scheme. Should they have called the timeout? Yeah. Should Preston, like Andy Herman said, or was it Andy, or was it one of the other ones?
Andy. Yeah,
it was said, Andy. Take the 5-yard penalty, do whatever. I even said, he should have played ultra press and just put Devontae on his ass and then he wouldn't have been able to make a play because he would have had to get up and re-scramble to get up. So, you know, whatever. But back to my original point, Quay was like a man on fire until he got hurt. Now, I know they said that him and Darnell avoided major issues, but they're not sure how long each of them will be out. But it sounds like maybe with the bye week and that, there's going to be plenty of rest to be able to evaluate whether or not they're going to miss any time or not. But now Mike was distracted me with hand signals, so
Oh no, that's to my son. He just woke up from a
Oh.
nap. So don't mind anything in the background. Sorry about that.
But Quay was just on fire, and I think had he not got injured, this game would have been completely different.
And something that you were kind of getting onto is not just in the run game, but what Quay and Devondre, when they're both in there, what they give Green Bay is they're not big in terms of their like weight, but they're lanky and long defenders on the interior of the defense. And
and they have agility.
Yeah, and so like you compare it, they're both 6'3" or 6'4" almost, and they both have long wingspans, as opposed to like McDuffie and Wilson, who both played solidly in but they're both 6'1", and McDuffie in particular is kind of a T-Rex in terms of his wingspan. So you in terms of you saw it kind of where they're like a step away from being in the play, whereas if it's Quay or Devondre, they might be able to affect a throwing lane a little bit better, kind of thing, where kind of like when Love got picked off against the Lions, where he thought he had an open throwing lane, but what's it called? The Lions inside linebacker was able to get a hand up to tip the pass for the interception. It's that kind of effect on a play where it's like, you're in position, but if you're a little taller, kind of thing, it's you have a more tangible impact on a play. And I think you kind of saw that where Oakland, Las Vegas was able to run some slants.
I know, I've been having that same problem too.
So I've been like, just say the Raiders kind of thing and stuff. But that's it definitely had a big impact. And yeah, I'm very happy to have seen that. That was honestly all I really cared about in the post game. Was that LaFleur said it sounded like both Quay and Savage avoided major injury, and they were optimistic they'd have both. So we'll be tracking that this week as the team goes through practice. I think it's gonna be really important to get both those guys back on the field, because they do, I know Savage is the guy who's always a step away from making a big play too, but it's a night and day difference from what they're able to do with him on the field as opposed to someone like Dallin Levitt playing. But it's just hard to talk about where this defense is, because I feel like unless guys are going to play, to use a hockey term, unless they're going to play on their head, it's like this scheme is what it is. I know that, got certain people said, well, Barry's tried different things and stuff, but I said, but at the end of the day, he's a older defensive coordinator, and defensive coordinators as a whole, but especially older ones, they tend to cling to their identity, their coaching identity. And when their back is against the wall, they're going to go with what their preference is and their identity is, come hell or high water. And Barry's cover 4 is such a wait and react. It's not even like in a, that's the big difference with someone like a Salah or even a Fangio, is they run these aggressive, it's a shell, it's a covered shell, but their guys they trigger so much more freely. They're much more aggressive. Whereas Barry, Pettins, even, it's like, it's okay, we'll let you have some stuff and we'll come and make a play, we think. And I do think that mentality is why you see guys who are missing tackles, missing plays, is because they're either not trusting what they're seeing or they're waiting for stuff to happen. And then they're like, okay, I'm going to go rally to the football now, kind of thing and stuff. That's why when someone like, a Razul is is able to instinctively jump a route like he did a couple times against the Raiders, it's like, oh, like, yeah, look how good that guy looks. And it's like, those are the kind of things where it's hard to say like, yeah, that's definitely going to happen when the scheme is let's sit back, let's, we're going to keep everything in front of us. So that's why I don't even know if I have a disappointment necessarily. I guess, and I feel like you might have a similar one in terms of defense, is Anthony Johnson Jr. has not been active. I know that we probably both sound like a broken, a beaten drum talking about this one, but like we kind of talked about the offense. This team is young. This team is learning about itself. It does you no good to just waste snaps on guys who are special teams predominant players. And also, like, if you're not sold on Savage, like, sure, he's playing. I think he's playing well, but start giving the only guy who's got multiple years on a deal. I know he's only a rookie, he's only a 7th round pick and stuff, but are you going to just keep signing special teams guys every year and, draft one guy every year? No, like, you got to start coming up with answers because, especially if Love turns it up the rest of this season, or if, they make some moves in the offseason, whatever it is, you got to start piecing together the what are the weak spots on this roster, and safety is one of the big, the high profile ones. So that's my disappointment so far this season on defense. What about you, Joe?
Mine's going to surprise people in a way, and it might definitely surprise you, Mike, but I'm going to say the edge rushers. And it's not so much because they're not getting pressures, they're not doing that, but more they're so much struggling and setting an edge that it's really hindered the run defense. And I even include Rashawn in there, even though his pass rush has been great. None of them have been able to set an edge. And, we've joked about it, we've talked about it, that if you want to beat the Packers, just run to the outside and you'll not be stopped. And that's rang true for the most part. So my biggest disappointment is the run defense, specifically the edge rushers in run defense. Because as a Michigan guy, I know as an Iowa guy, we know collectively as NFL viewers that all these guys know how to set an edge because they came from programs where they had to learn how to set an edge. And now they're playing for the Packers and they all of a sudden can't set an edge to save their life.
That's something that Westendorf and I talk about all the time, because what was the thing about Rashawn coming out of Michigan? It was, okay, like, this guy's a big, strong, athletic dude. He sets against the run well. He was their base end in that Michigan defense. He was the guy that was going to face the tight end, face the double team, triple team. And it was like, will he learn to pass rush? Oh, well, at least, if even if he doesn't learn to pass rush, at least he's going to be a strong run stopper. And that's just, that's one of those where it's like, is it because the scheme tells him, screw it, just go get the quarterback? Is it because he's not playing with his hand in the dirt anymore? There's a whole bunch of reasons, and who am I to say which one exactly is it? And that's kind of the part that Westendorf and I chuckle about, is because we're like, okay, so I guess this means, because Van Ness is
the same way.
Yeah, he's basically, putting it in super simplified terms, they're kind of the same player. And it's like, so does that mean in 3 years, Van Ness is going to be pushing for double-digit sacks, but also suck as a run defender? So,
well, you can even see it now where, he's having tremendous success putting pressure. He may not have the numbers so far, but he's been able to put the pressure on quarterbacks, but then he overruns his run defense, the runner, or he fills the wrong gap and he gives up the edge. And I know that was not an issue at Iowa. And because Iowa specializes in run defense, because they play a zone defense where they're going to rush as many as they can towards the line to stop any kind of run. We just saw that this past weekend against Wisconsin. They were bottling up the run. So I know Van Ness has the ability to do it, but now he can't. So is that a Barry thing? is that who's their line or their edge rusher coach? Is it Olivedetti or whatever it is?
Oh no, it's Rebrovich. So
Okay,
yeah.
so is
Yeah.
that
Like I said,
his?
there's so many different it's hard to point at who's I guess at fault kind of thing. But yeah, when you have, like you said, you have two guys who come from two programs that pride themselves on stopping the run so you can pressure the passer on passing downs, that they come to the NFL and just, Gary has apparently lost the ability to defend, set an edge and defend the run. And like you said, Van Ness, I put it more on his elbow and stuff like that because I thought the first like week and a half, I thought he was doing a good job setting the edge, and hopefully coming out of the bye he's healthy. But yeah, like you said, there's kind of
Well, even
potential
Preston
flashes of
isn't
it kind of
looking
thing.
right. Even Preston isn't looking right in it. And
Yeah,
Preston was a pretty good edge because when they brought in the two Smiths, we knew what Zedarius did. He was just going to run, hair on fire and get the quarterback. He wasn't really the run stopper. Preston was the run stopper who had the pass rush ability, and now we're not even seeing it out of Preston anymore.
yeah.
So is it
I
a
think,
scheme thing?
yeah. I like I said, I'm not in the room, so I can't say with
Well, damn
any
it,
sort of
Mike.
certainty. But hey, you're closer than me. But that is definitely a disappointment. So we've got the defense covered with our disappointments both in the secondary and the front seven. But like I said, I don't have too much more to say on Barry's unit. It's kind of it. I feel like it's the definition of it is what it is. You're gonna kind of just live with whatever comes out, whatever it spits out on the end of production line end. But moving to a unit that has, I think, surpassed expectations
It's
in
the only
most
good
senses.
unit on the squad right now.
Especially because they seem to have fixed the issues that led to the Saints touchdown return. It's the special teams, and as I have it on our notes, I don't even need to ask what our surprise is because I know we both have the same one. It is Anders gaining
And
or
I got to take a
maintaining.
moment here.
Yeah,
Uh, we got a guy on our probably both our Twitters, and he's a uh, Packers content producer too, and he's been seen on Game On a few times or a lot of times recently. But Ammer, it is Anders Carlson. Every time I see him on Game On, and I hear him, he's always calling him Anders. No, it's Anders. Anders.
like I said, he has earned the right to tell us how to pronounce his name and for it to be pronounced that way. It's like I said, we thought that he was going to be one of the top 2 or 3 biggest concerns in the season, and he has been probably the most consistent thing on this team. I think the
That's the
only
scary
thing,
point.
right, and I think the only part that I'm a little concerned or questioning is, he's supposed to have a dynamite leg like his brother. And I don't know if it's how Bisaccia is telling him to do it, but I feel like he hasn't just blasted the ball through the end zone on his kickoffs. I know this is a nitpick of nitpicks kind of thing, but I can't tell if Bisaccia is trying to set up that whole like kick the ball to the 1 yard line kind of thing, or because there isn't the college like fair catch it and you get it at the 25 rule. So I can't tell if Bisaccia is screwing around with that where he's like, nah, kick it like just short. But I don't know. While the weather's still decent, I'd rather see him just boom it through the back of the end zone. But
He has.
like,
It's just not been as often as I think you're wanting it.
yeah, like I said, that's why I do think it's a little bit of like a coaching thing because some of his field goals, it's like, no, the dude's got a leg. So yeah, I can't tell if they're just kind of messing around with some stuff on kickoffs. But other than that, not much to say about special teams. Like Dan Whelan has been solid, but we've seen with punters, they've looked good in, ever since Tim Mastay, they've looked good in the warm months, and then they've all gone to crap when the weather got cold. So I like what I've seen so far from Whelan, but until it gets cold, I'm not really passing much judgment on
Well,
him
and I
either
think you
way.
can say that about the whole crew, wait for the weather to turn for Anders and Whelan and all that stuff because, they're doing fine now, but let's see what happens when it gets to be like negative 20 degrees and, snowfall and the wind blowing 40 mile an hour.
Don't snuff the one ray of sunshine on the team right now, Joe.
Well, you got to
Pun
be
intended.
realistic.
Yeah, I know.
This,
No,
the,
but
well, no, I get what you're saying because I was yelling at Wendell Ferreira earlier because he keeps saying you don't draft, kickers, and I said, well, be careful with that. You want to say you don't draft them before the 5th round because the last 2 kickers that the Packers really have had were drafted in the 5th round.
sixth round.
Mason was.
Sixth round. I think they were both sixth.
I thought Mason was a 5th.
No, I think he
Or
was a
was
sixth. I think he was a sixth because I'm pretty sure this is how big of a draft nerd I am. I'm pretty sure it was, I forget the order, but I think the Packers had like 3 picks in a row, or they were like within 5 picks of each other. And it was some combination of Corey Hall, Mason Crosby, and Desmond Bishop were all drafted like one after another, basically. So almost certain they were both 6th-round picks. But like you said, they're mid or late day 3 kind of guys.
Yeah, you're right about Mason. He was a 6th. And really, my mind is shot, so I don't even remember Anders. But I swore one of them was a 5th-rounder.
I think you're thinking of Clifford.
Yep, they were both 6th-rounders. So, but still, you got to be careful with that because you're going to put the voodoo curse on him, and then he's going to not do anything. So,
as long as he doesn't see it, it's fine.
Right. But yeah, really, you got to kind of temper expectation because of the reasons we were just saying. And it's kind of like the Jordan Love thing. He did so well, but eventually he's going to have that hiccup or that moment, and you just got to hope he rebuilds off of that moment. Not
Yeah.
like he was doing in the preseason and training camp, where the minute he missed, he was completely done.
Yeah.
So,
and like the thing that obviously it would be great if he would stay like perfect, but the thing you don't want to see is like if he shanks like a 30 something yarder, because it's like, okay, guys miss 50-yard field goals and stuff, and even PATs, like, no, you shouldn't be missing them, but they're like 40-yard kicks at this point. So every once in a while something's gonna go a little haywire on them, kind of thing and stuff. But the thing you don't want to see from Anders is like he shanks a 30-yarder kind of thing, and then it's like, uh-oh, like, what is that gonna do? And so you're kind of
yeah,
just like,
he
yeah,
pulls a Mason against the Bengals a couple years back, where
yeah,
the minute he missed one, he missed 5 more. So you don't want to see that. So you got to kind of temper down and enjoy what you're going with, but know there's going to be some rocky moments here or there. Same
yep.
with Whelan.
But going from things that are rocky and stuff, but to things that are looking for smoother sailing, Joe has been working hard on our website, as he said, ohanapackers.org. It is on me now to get some of my own writing on the website, but we do ask that you please check it out. As we mentioned on the previous pod, we do have the streams of all of the podcast episodes on there. So if you prefer to have one centralized location as opposed to getting it from a podcast server or site, please do check the website out. And as I said, not just the two of us, but Joe has some guest writers lined up who will be making periodic contributions to the website, from everything from game reaction, fan reaction, draft look aheads, state of the team, and I know Joe has already started on it, where there's some things that are even bigger than football kind of topics to cover. So I think both of us will kind of keep treading water on both sides of the creek in terms of that. But please do check the website out.
Yeah, and to
Yeah.
plug my latest one that I put on there, just so we can, it's a crucial catch time of season. It's just talking about how crucial catch is a little bit personal for me, as it is for a lot of people. So go over there, give it a read, ohanapackers.org, just to and drop us, kind of like we asked with the the podcast, give us a like, give us a thumbs up, whatever you got to do, and drop us a line, let us know how you're doing, or if Crucial Catch is something that's important to you too, then we'd like to hear about it, and maybe we can uh get you some airtime at some point to talk about it. So, you know, go over and give it a look and drop us a note.
Yep, tell us how we're doing. We do appreciate any sort of feedback, like Joe said, on the website regarding the podcast. We want to make sure that the things you're hearing are the things you're interested in hearing and reading. So that's gonna do it for us. Like I said, we don't want to drag this one too long. Just trying to, just like the team, we want to get back in a groove with this. Hopefully we're going to see better play out of the Packers coming out of the bye. But that's going to do it for us this week. We appreciate you guys listening in. Check out our Twitters. I am at Kawano Mike. Iowa Joe is at Iowa_Joe86. The podcast is at Ohana_Packers. Please be sure to catch the podcast either on the website, ohanapackers.org, or on your favorite podcast app, site, however you get your podcast. Please subscribe, like, give reviews. Like I said, we do appreciate any kind of feedback we can get. Packers, there are 12 games left on this schedule. Just like we said, it's all a part of the journey this season. See where this team is going, not even limited to this year, but into the future. Who is going to be at the helm, both in terms of coaching, front office, and quarterback. So it's going to be hopefully a fun ride, but it will be at least an interesting ride for the Packers. But for Iowa Joe, I'm Mike Kawano. We say mahalo and aloha.